Welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Scott Lawson, certified business coach with ActionCOACH of Coastal Bend in South Texas, and I'll be your host today. I'm very excited to have our special guest, Chris Ragsdale, on our show. Chris is the owner of Septic IQ. Today, we're going to talk to Chris about his business, his journey to business ownership, some challenges, some successes. We'll have him share what it's really like to own and operate a business as an entrepreneur. If it's your first time on the channel, frankly, even if it's not your first time, be sure to like and subscribe so you get notifications when we publish new content. Well, Chris, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Look forward to it.
Sounds like we're fun. Glad to have you. It will be. It'll be a fun conversation. Chris, I want to talk to you about your business, but I'd love to start with just you. How did your journey start? Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about your path before the business, and then we can talk about the business.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? And thankfully started out in life not having everything I wanted, and tried to figure out how to get that, right? And so I kind of remember back to grade school, like those little juice boxes, Capri Suns. Like I remember I'd get a few of those, and went to a school with a bunch of kids that were a lot wealthier. But I had my Capri Suns, and I figured out if I put them in the freezer the night before, I'd go to school the next day, and by lunchtime I'd have a slushie. And all the other kids had money. I didn't have money, but I had, fruit slushie.
Something they wanted?
Yeah, and so I think that was my first entrepreneur venture.
Great.
So, maybe late 1980s, you're 7, 8, 9 years old, and selling slushies, making a couple bucks a piece. You feel pretty good.
Right. Yeah, that was your start in business. I love it.
That's what it all started.
You had a stint maybe in manufacturing as an engineer.
Yeah. So fast forward like 30 years or something there, right? And it's been 8 years ago when I left the Caterpillar company. I used to be a manufacturing engineer for Caterpillar for about 5 years, and that was wonderful. Really enjoyed that experience.
Great. So then the business opportunities started to come along.
Yeah. So just kind of thinking back, for a long time I've wanted to have a business since I was a kid, but there was definitely a time I started working for Walmart of all places when I was 16, and by the time I was like 22 or something, I'd already been there for quite a few years, so they gave me a chance to be a manager of the Tire Lube Express area. Hey, it gave 9 years, it was like 8 or 9 years to Walmart. They taught me a lot, but ultimately in the end, our values didn't align. So then I went on to Discount Tire for a couple years, realized, hey, another great company, but didn't want to stick around in the tire business. And then it was 5 years at a power plant where I picked up some industrial experience, and another great thing I enjoyed. And so I'll stop there for a second. That's when I started learning about septic systems when I was working for the power plant.
Oh.
And left there about 5 years at the power plant, and then that's when I started at Caterpillar. And basically I'd take vacation days and weekends or whatever I could to start building that. And I actually started.
You take vacation days while you were at Caterpillar to start building your business?
I started building a campground with RV spaces and stuff like that, and that's how I actually got into the septic business, because I needed lots of septic systems out there at the campground, and I figured I figured out how to build all of the rest of the aspects of the park, but I wasn't licensed for the septic stuff back then, so pursued all that.
So if those RVs needed hookups, part of it would be water, part of it would be electricity. That wouldn't be too new for you, but they also needed to dump the holding tanks, or at least have some place for the black water and gray water to go. So
yeah,
the septic system kind of came into the need. I see. Great.
Yep. So that's when I first started learning about septic systems, and built the whole park, which is now 58 acres, and 19 cabins and 48 RV spots, and still lots of land to develop. But it's going well, and then we're continuing to build on to the septic business as it's grown into its own you know sustainable entity on its own here.
Great, great. That's interesting. So, Septic IQ. What is Chris Ragsdale's role? What's your day-to-day involvement in the business?
You know, it's been changing for the last couple of years in all the right ways.
Good,
I've got the best team I've ever had in the existence of the company,
wonderful.
and maybe even the best team I've worked with in other companies that I've worked at. And so thankful for that. I've got a couple of great techs. One of them whom just started yesterday actually, so he's kind of getting up to speed. We've got a pretty good training program we're going to be putting him through, and then I've got a guy who's what we call our dispatcher and membership coordinator. So he's there to make sure phones get answered and stay organized as far as what jobs we need to, what tech we need to send where, and what we've done for people. And I say membership coordinator too, because we offer these memberships where we go and check on septic systems for people. And then we've got a fellow named Robert, who's our general manager for the company, who he's taken on a huge role with the day-to-day operations, and it's given me a huge opportunity to really think about what the future is for the company and really work on developing that. And that's the nerdy stuff that I like. I can get into the day-to-day. I can go do a service call if I need to, but every piece of that business is important, from them doing the service calls to answering the phone to making sure all that stuff stays coordinated. But you also have somebody looking at the future too. So
right, right. That is so important. And business owner listeners and viewers can relate to the significance of having a good team. So often at Action Coach, we find early on, if you put an org chart together and look at all the different roles that a company needs, that business owner is wearing a lot of those hats himself or herself. And as you build that team, and you can let some responsibilities that may have originally been yours be handed to somebody who's really able to take it and do well with it. That's so important. Gives you freedom then to work on what you really enjoy. And it sounds like part of that is looking to the future for the company. So what you enjoy personally doing is it products? Is it developing new markets? What do you focus your efforts on?
It's just it's finding the next disruptive technology, philosophy, whatever it is that's going to take your team to just a level that your competitors can't even imagine.
Right.
And so, right. And perhaps even myself, I didn't imagine it at one point in my life. Right. And so, but you have to take time to think about it, to figure out where you need to go, and then chart the course.
So you have some interesting technology, and you have found clientele or customers that need that. You're in the septic industry. Help us understand a little bit about who your customers are. You mentioned a subscription service. You mentioned sending texts out. Give us a little bit of a feel for how the actual relationship with the customers works and what your model is.
Okay, just to give you some context, I'll kind of tell you how everybody else does it, which is consequently how we did it, right? Because that's you start, you get in business and you go, well, what's everybody else doing? I'll do that. Fair enough. But if you're serious about it, you have to start thinking about it and think about how you can get better. But basically with what they call aerobic septic systems in Texas, where we're located, it's very common to see what they call a maintenance contract on an aerobic septic system, where you're going to go out to that customer site 3 times a year, and you're gonna make a best effort to look for problems that have either already occurred or perhaps even ones that are going to happen. Right, you're going to do some preventive maintenance there. That's the model, right? That's what everybody does.
And those clientele are typically residential customers in the local area?
Yeah. So our coverage area is a little over an hour in all
Okay.
directions from Victoria. And they're going to be residential. They're going to be, there's some industrial facilities, commercial
Okay.
facilities that we take care of. So any facility that's rural and doesn't have access to city sewers, that's going to
Okay.
have a septic system, pretty much we can help them take care of that. So so our competitors that they're still in the old model. They're just doing the 3 visits. And one of the biggest complaints that we get from that model is the service provider is either not doing their job, they're collecting the money up front. Say let's say you have a contract, you call me up, Scott, and you say, hey, I need a septic contract. I want somebody to take care of this, and it's January. So you give
Mm-hmm.
me, let's say you give me $500, and that's January through December.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what if I never come back? What if I do the first visit and I never come back? Right? Shame on me if I did that. We don't,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's a big complaint in the
Right.
industry, and I'd be kind of ticked off too if that happened to me.
Sure.
So it's a valid complaint. Now, the other piece of this is maybe maybe the maintenance provider does come back, but they're just not good at communicating. Maybe they did everything they were supposed to. They did all the maintenance. They did the 3 visits a year, but they never told the customer they did. Maybe they never sent text messages saying, "Hey, we're going to be in your area tomorrow, and we're going to knock out that maintenance," which is a proactive communication, right? And then there's the reactive, where you're actually sending a
Got a
report.
problem.
Yeah, here's what we did for you, whether there were problems or not. Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't, but I mean, you owe it to the customer to communicate to them that we were there, we did this service, and you're getting what you paid for. So we've looked for ways, even before, I'll get into this monitoring technology here in a second, but even before we discovered that, which is another company that invented it. But even before we discovered it and became a dealer for it, we were looking for ways to make the traditional model better. So we found a great program called Service Titan, which is like the most amazing platform out there for service businesses.
Okay.
Now we're able to very easily send a text message to all of our customers that we're going to go do maintenance for tomorrow, and it says something like, hey, just want to let you know we're going to be doing maintenance in your area. We'd like to get by and get your septic system fixed up. We don't know exactly when we're going to be there because we want to take the time to serve each customer throughout the day. And just like a FedEx route, we're going to go from house to house to house. And so most of the customers don't even care what time we get there, but they love the communication. So that's the proactive piece. And then Service Titan now allows us to have iPads. So the technicians have iPads. They go out there. They are clicking off the inspection points, and then we have certain inspection points that we want to have a higher level of accountability to our customers. So we actually require the technician take a picture of that piece. So now the customer's looking at our reports, going, "Wow, I don't even know if the other guy shows up because he's either dishonest or disorganized. Don't know which. And now here is this company who's sending me a text message in advance and sending me a report with pictures of my system, and the final picture is just a picture of their system in their yard that day. So there's no way we could pencil whip reports even if we wanted to, which is another complaint that's out there. And so we want to hold ourselves accountable.
Right.
So customers have just a maximum level of trust for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the model that exists that everybody else does, that we've been doing since I think January 2023 is when we deployed Service Titan, and it's been just a game changer for us.
Right.
So now in 2023, I'm at the annual trade show, and I meet the owner of a company called SeptiLink, and basically this guy named Clint and his team have developed a great product for taking existing technology, telematics, right? And we've put it on a septic system now. And so now I can hook up this SeptiLink control panel. And if your system loses power, you're here doing a meeting with somebody, I would get a notification and be able to tell you, hey, while you're doing your meeting, your system just lost power.
Mm.
It's communicating over the LTE cell phone network there. And so it's live to our office. You even get an app on your phone if you want it. If your system lost power, if you have a high level condition, we can monitor pump running amps, when your pump turns on and off. If you have a toilet leaking in your house and all the water is coming out to that septic system and it's causing the pump to cycle on and off throughout the day, I'll be able to call you up and say, hey, I think your toilet's running.
Mm-hmm.
So it does a lot of really great things that is going to take us from a very reactive model in the maintenance world and bring it to a proactive place.
I see.
We can perhaps fix things before they break. That's our goal.
Uh-huh. The panel that you put on the septic system for the customer actually communicates back to the mothership, so to speak, via cell phone technology. Is that what you said?
Exactly. And while myself, I have a pretty good understanding of deployment of Wi-Fi networks and computer networking and stuff. I've built a lot of that. That's an entire different skill.
Oh.
And so I want my septic maintenance technicians to be focused on being great septic maintenance technicians and not having to worry about the Wi-Fi of the customer's house.
Okay.
Because they may have great Wi-Fi in their house, but I guarantee you when they designed their Wi-Fi system, they didn't account for having great Wi-Fi 40 feet out in the backyard where their septic system is. Like, why would they, right?
Yeah.
And so by communicating through the cell phone network, you're bypassing all that. As long as I got AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon connection, we're hooked up.
Wow, I see. That's interesting. Yeah. Yep. So I love hearing that. Love hearing how that works and how you have differentiated yourself. We often are advising business owners, find your niche. Find your, what makes you different, what makes you stand apart. So even early, before this technology, you were standing apart by recognizing where the problems were that others in your industry left dissatisfied customers and clients, and you found a way to make sure you solved that. Reminds me of a conversation I had with a business owner recently where he had done an analysis, a SWOT analysis of the different competitors he would have in the business that he was thinking of in his region. And his first thought was, boy, there are a lot of people doing what I did, what I would like to do. It was early, he hadn't actually started the business. Maybe this is not a good place for me. But he also recognized in that SWOT analysis where all of the others were not satisfying a certain need. And he realized this is a great opportunity for me. Even though there may be a lot in my industry, there's a piece missing with everyone else. If I can fill that void, I've got a great opportunity. It just kind of reminds me of what you were doing.
The customers will tell you the answer. They'll tell you how to run your business. Just listen to them,
Yeah.
And then they'll even pay you for it. It's crazy.
Exactly. Exactly. Take advantage of that. You can solve their need and solve your own as well at the same time. That's wonderful. So when you think back, Chris, about the different things that have taken place, I'll say with Septic IQ, but you've got the business experience with the RV park and the cabins and the other things that you've been involved in too. So I'd just be curious for business owners who might be listening, what are some of the biggest mistakes you made and what did you learn from them? Maybe we can prevent somebody else from reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, that's a good one. People always talk about how you go to hire a new employee and you say, and I want someone who pays attention to detail, right? Paying attention to detail, that's so important. But like, there's been a lot of details I've missed over the years.
Oh,
like I got more than I missed probably. I don't know, but there's a few that I can remember. I was putting in some water pipes, and this might have been early on in the park, and I bought pipe that was not pressure rated.
Oh.
And I installed it. I dug the trench, I installed it, I put it all in there, and before I covered it up, I looked down and it said not for pressure use. And I said, oh my goodness, what have I done? I've installed 800 feet of this stuff. And so I mean, that's just more of a technical thing. You know, you look at 2 inch
Hmm.
pipe on the shelf.
Hmm.
Of course, it says not for pressure. I can't blame the manufacturer. That was on me. But
Yeah.
the they look the same. You know,
Hmm.
if you don't read the details,
Hmm.
but it's there if you pay attention to it. So,
Right. Right.
um, anyways, yeah, that was a fun one that I
Yeah.
recall.
Yep. Pay attention to the details. That's and even when you talk about maybe I've still got some mistakes to make, or maybe I've actually already covered all those details. A business owner, when they first go into business, oftentimes there are a lot of things that fall through the cracks, that they didn't realize were as important as they later learn. And we find it's pretty beneficial to make sure we actually go through an exercise of looking at every area of a business and making sure. Now, we didn't forget anything, did we? And in case there's something that does kind of slip through. So, yeah, pay attention to the details. And I'm sure that story probably comes up when you're hiring employees and you're asking them to fulfill certain responsibilities that you did. You're probably able to help them. Make sure you check to see if this is a pressure application that I get pipe that's pressure rated.
Yeah, yeah, right. So once you have experience like that, then hopefully it affects how you look at things, and then you can share that, right? But that said, I think Caterpillars, I'm thinking about this. They launched a program they called built-in quality on their assembly line, and the goal there was to get the best quality product out the back door. Um, and but the cultural shift it required was just incredible, and it had a good culture to begin with. But so I guess it wasn't as bad as it could have been in some places, but it required people to bring their own issues to light.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they caused something. Well, if they
Mm-hmm.
conceal it, it becomes a massive issue for a customer later.
Right.
If they if you create a culture of, hey, you make a mistake, it's okay as long as you weren't malicious,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's okay to make mistakes. Maybe even celebrate them. I don't know how that looks, right? That sounds
Uh-huh.
even
Right.
weird, but it's like, hey, you know what? Jimmy over here just stripped this bolt on the back of an alternator as he was putting it on the engine. Which, for example, when you put that in a 36-ton excavator, um, the alternator is deep in that engine bay. Not exactly an easy thing to swap out. And when these machines go out to the field, um, these might be $1 million machines. You want one little bolt to shut you down on a job site.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if Jimmy raises his hand and says, "Hey, my bad, I did this," right? Then the rest of the team can come together, and that's where one of my roles was as a manufacturing engineer at Caterpillar was investigate these things and go, okay, you know, was it that Jimmy wasn't trained? Maybe Jimmy didn't have the right tool for the job. Maybe he needs a 6 point socket that's a little deeper instead of a 12 point socket.
Mm-hmm.
Um, look back at the engineering specs and let's make sure that the torque wrench that we have specifically for this operation is set correctly to the engineering spec and calibrated by what they call the tool crib. They had
Mm-hmm.
people who just like that was their job to calibrate tools and create tools and all that, and make sure it's calibrated properly. And you know, I'd say 80% of the time it wasn't just the guy was maybe more than that. Like most of the time it was not somebody's just mad and trying to do a bad job. And
Right.
oftentimes it wasn't even their technique. It was just like there was a better tool that they could have had that nobody ever thought of.
Mm-hmm.
And so those solving those kind of problems was a big part of my role for 5 years at CAT, and that was just fascinating. But yeah, you got to have a culture where like mistakes are okay.
Mm-hmm. I can and you even mentioned the possibility of celebrating those, and I know that in my own manufacturing experience that was a big deal. If someone
Yeah,
made a mistake and what you just described, if they wanted to hide it and prevent anybody from knowing they'd made that mistake, that could cause so many more problems in so many ways. So well, as you were talking about, well, what are the solutions to that? One thing that I always encourage my middle managers to do is not only celebrate the fact that this to the whole team, maybe this person raised this issue, let me know that stripping a bolt was an issue. Ask Jimmy. If Jimmy's the one that did it, ask Jimmy, how can we prevent this from happening again? Sometimes all those comments that you had are quite valid, but sometimes you'll learn from the person on the shop floor that there's something that you hadn't considered. It wasn't a tool crib issue. It wasn't a spec issue. It wasn't a torque setting issue, but it was something else that Jimmy didn't want to stop what he was doing and have to go get another tool because he already had this tool in his hand. Well, let's just make that tool accommodate both things. Or, Jimmy tried to get this job done right at the brake buzzer because he knew he was going to be the last one in line if he didn't get it done right away. Well, maybe we need to do something to make that less important, or whatever, whatever the criteria
Right.
are. It is, I think it's important for people to not only recognize and maybe celebrate those mistakes, because that's where we learn. We learn from mistakes. If everything's going smoothly, we're not learning anything. Let's have some way of actually encouraging that. In a safety areas, we used to actually keep track of near misses. Nobody
Right.
was hurt, but we saw a situation. Please, everyone, bring those to our attention. If there is a near miss, let's address that, and we could reward people for bringing those near misses. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to do just what you're talking about, and people need to understand the other side of that. If you don't do it, is there a disincentive? Is there a reason for people not to want to have a black mark next to their name because they made a mistake? Let's see how we can benefit from this instead of hiding it or causing later problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example. So I've asked you a little bit about the past, Chris, what you learned from mistakes. Now let's look to the future. When you think about Septic IQ in the future, let's say maybe 3 to 5 years. If your hopes and dreams come true, how will it look different in 3 to 5 years than it does today?
Okay, so I mentioned how we're already using Service Titan in a way that's really helping customers see the value in what we do.
Yes.
And then now the future, right? We've rebranded our company. Formerly, we were Crossroads Septic Solutions, which it's a fine name for a company, but it didn't really indicate our direction, and it didn't really differentiate ourselves. And so, so I thought it was appropriate that we go ahead and change that, because we are, we became one of the first 2 dealers for the SepiLink company right after I met that team at the trade show back in 2024. I think it was March of 24. Okay. And I'm just looking at it like this is the future. I'm so glad that someone who has invented this, or has not invented it, right, but brought that technology to this industry. Because GM's been putting OnStar in vehicles since the 80s, 90s, something like that. And so, in the septic industry, very, very slow to adopt things apparently. But anyways, I'm glad it's here. I didn't have the technical skills to put that together, but somebody finally came along and did. And I guess I'll say I was very quick to realize what the implication of it is. And I see it as something that eventually the old model can just go away, because we don't need it anymore. Because now we can be monitoring septic systems 24 hours a day. We don't need as many site visits either, right? Do we need to go see that system 3 times a year? If we have really great data coming in every day. But in my opinion, I don't think you need as many visits, right? And so if you don't need as many visits, well, now you can serve more customers with the same people. Now, the visits that you do make, perhaps you can sell something, and so you can have a little bit more of a profitable company. And if you have a little bit more of a profitable company, maybe you can take better care of the people on your team. So all these things are connected. There's also what I call a labor division factor here that I think is not yet realized. We have very experienced technicians, and like I said, I just hired one yesterday. I have great faith that he's going to learn and get to the point where he can make any repair, but he's just not there yet, and that's okay. like he just started yesterday or Monday rather. But what you have the opportunity to do is now, let's say, when a problem comes up, SepticLink's going to tell me. So I know more or less what skill set is needed to go to that site. So I can send a more experienced technician over there. The sites that we're going to go see anyways for proactive maintenance visits, I can send a less experienced technician. They still have the accountability of having to take pictures. They still have their checklists. We're still constantly training them, but we can put a less experienced technician on those maintenance routes,
Okay.
and it's a great way for them to learn and bring people into the industry where the more experienced repair technicians can focus on doing repairs, right?
Okay.
And so that division of labor, I think, is really important. I think again, unrealized yet, but there may even be an opportunity to drive different vehicles. Right now, we have these big 3/4-ton Chevy trucks that, I mean, they've got like a plumbing store in the back. These big work beds, and well, if you're just doing regular maintenance and you know that SepticLink has not indicated that there's any problems, how many parts do you need? So I think in the future, a dedicated maintenance technician could just be driving like a like a Maverick or a Ranger, Colorado,
Right.
like a smaller pickup.
Yep.
Whereas the repair tech could have this bigger one where they have a lot more tools because, well, there's a need for that.
All
So I
right.
think there's a lot of efficiency factors there. Again, unrealized yet, but excited to see what all those what happens there.
I know you've got a good picture of that, and maybe more business owners could benefit from it. When you think about that fleet of work vehicles that you have, I managed a Knapheide facility that upfit the service trucks and work trucks and that type of thing, and we did find that as time went on, that the smaller vehicles, sometimes even the small vans, but even SUV type vehicles and smaller ones could suffice for a lot of things, and we could set those up with the right shelving and the right racks and that type of thing in the back to take into account the particular things that person might need as they're doing their job. So I know exactly what you're describing probably fits. If I have a half dozen trucks that are loaded with all the equipment I possibly could need, and yet at the end of the week or the end of the month, I realized, you know what, I could have done all of that with one technician, and the rest of these calls could have been made by somebody that didn't have all of that equipment. They might have just needed these smaller components. Then that's an excellent fit, and something a lot of people don't think about, in the way of what the equipment that they put on the road really needs to be and what it is. And sometimes they get kind of caught in just the way things used to be. This is the way the business was when I first learned it, so it's all I know for the next generation. When really times have changed, and maybe they can find some other things for the next one. That's great. When you think about success, Chris, who's the first person you think of, and why?
Truett Cathy.
Oh,
Yeah, that guy's he's built a legacy, high quality. I mean, it's fast food, right? It's not lobster, but it's a consistent experience. Every time I go to a different Chick-fil-A, and whether you like his values or not, he's I believe true to them, and I can appreciate that. And and I think he's really made a good impact, in society. I've heard
yes.
stories of his generosity, and the things that he's done with his life. And then I love that it's right. I've never met him. I never met any of his kids or grandkids, but interact a lot with some of his employees. At our local Chick-fil-A, but yeah, it's I mean, go to a McDonald's, go to Burger King, go to any of them, and then go to Chick-fil-A, and you're just like, what's
Right.
happening here? Well, it's leadership, it's culture, it's everything.
I had an interesting experience. You want to compare it to the McDonald's or the other fast food places, but I had an interesting experience when I pulled up to a Chick-fil-A during a rainstorm, and the Chick-fil-A employee came out to my car with two of them came out. One on my son was with me, one on the right side, one on the left side of the car with umbrellas to guide us into the Chick-fil-A under umbrellas in a rainstorm. I actually stopped the manager before I left that Chick-fil-A to say, I've eaten in some pretty fancy restaurants. I've had some pretty good service at luxury restaurants before.
Right.
I've never had anybody from the restaurant come out to my car with an umbrella. And,
Right.
I commended him. And of course, his first comment was, I will tell the team that you appreciate that. So you're right. The culture, that is such a great example of culture and customer service that we, and again, we use that a lot of times with our clients when we talk about customer service and how you can stand apart and how you can be different. Sometimes those are things that you don't really have to invest that much into to really stand out among your competition. So yeah, it's a great example.
And they weren't selling you anything. They just brought you an umbrella.
Yes.
It wasn't like, hey, let me, here's an add-on service that we can offer.
That's right. Exactly.
For 25 cents, we'll bring an umbrella to your car.
So that old thing of under promise and over deliver. I mean, they really came through on that because that was more than I expected by far. Yeah, that's right. If you could do it all over again, Chris, what would you do differently?
I started going to school after high school, going to college after high school, and then by the time I was in my early 20s, I'd already had several years in with Walmart, so they were starting to take me seriously. So I quit college and just became a Walmart manager.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I can't complain. I learned so much. Mm-hmm. Being a 22-year-old manager of a department with guys in their 40s and 50s, good luck, buddy.
Right.
Figure that out. I definitely screwed a lot of things up. And looking back, Walmart was probably very desperate giving me that opportunity. But would I have learned something different if I had gone to college? Perhaps, but I certainly value the real life school that I went to and appreciate it. And but that said, there's been a lot of great people that took the time to teach me something.
Mm-hmm.
Just managers I've had along the way. This one fellow named Greg that I worked with at Caterpillar gave me the opportunity to look there. I think he saw more in me than I saw in myself, perhaps.
I mean, as I've heard your story, I'm even thinking in terms of that post-secondary education. I think when Chris invested in low pressure pipe, hundreds of feet of it that should have been high pressure.
Cheaper than college.
That was your tuition. I mean, yeah. It wasn't wasted money. It was an opportunity for you to learn and benefit from that. So I think we, as business owners, we need to think in terms of what did I learn from this more often, and that's really, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like that's where the real learning happens, is when things don't go smoothly and they didn't go quite as expected. So I kind of long for those, to be honest with you. I don't think they're setbacks as much as they are opportunities for learning and moving forward. Well, this has been a great conversation. I feel like we're nearing the end, Chris, but I'd like to give you the opportunity if you've got any questions for me.
I don't know. It's an interesting role you have here in this coaching endeavor, right?
It is indeed.
I guess you get to see a lot of different business owners. Honestly, I think that would be so fascinating.
It is.
You're getting to share your knowledge, but you're also getting to learn from experiences, good and bad experiences that they've had.
Exactly.
The question for you would be, if you built some kind of skill set, right? And maybe you're great in retail, you're great at something else, and in this case, we've developed a pretty good septic business, and there's people looking to you to say, hey, help me out. Let me do some of the things that help me do some of the things that you've already done. Well, I don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
to just spend hours on the phone with every person.
Right.
So you got to charge for it.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in a position like that, how would you go? How would you handle that?
Yeah. I really might a certain amount of time for doing it for free so I can learn and maybe learn as much as anything. What do I enjoy? What is it that really gives me excitement? And maybe taking a few of those calls from the Facebook group or from somebody else to just have general conversations. And like you say, you can't spend that time with everybody. But if you had one or two of those that you did, I suspect over time it would kind of develop into, this is the part I really enjoy. This is the part that did him or her the most good. Maybe I could open this up and be able to ask more people if they would be interested in this. And there might actually be a revenue stream for me. And they may be happy to have that inexpensive way to get good advice. So, I mean, it's one of those things that sounds like start slow and see what really sticks and what hits. And it might be that something develops out of that. Oftentimes it does. Even when people go into a venture like that with no idea where this is headed, if they'll just slowly, step by step, kind of go into what is it I really enjoy, what is it that was really helpful to other people, you may even find them come up with the idea. You know what? This was helpful to me. Would you mind if we set up something where I could pay you to talk with me once a week or once a month or whatever it might be?
Right.
So, I would actually, as much as where is the need, I would say, where is the enjoyment?
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it, Chris. And I'll kind of turn my focus back to our audience now. This is this Business Spotlight series with Scott Lawson from ActionCOACH of Coastal Bend and Chris Ragsdale of Septic IQ. Please be sure to like and subscribe so you continue to see great content for your listening and watching enjoyment. Thanks, and bye for now.